I remember being in Hank Dickinson's class out at UNT, and I know there are a lot of Tolos out there that are currently either
legend.
in Hank Dickinson's class or were in Hank Dickinson's class at some point. And one of the speakers came in and said, I always wanted a team that I could call my own. And that was one of the reasons they worked with UNT, was because, that was their team they could call their own. And I've always felt like the Cowboys were my number one team, and so it's mine. I share that with a lot of Cowboys fans. It's a lot of because, I grew up here. My dad was a Cowboys fan. My grandparents, we celebrated things around the Cowboys, so it became, it just was part of my natural life.
Could you imagine Thanksgiving without the Cowboys?
I couldn't, because I didn't grow up without it.
Yeah.
I
can't.
Every game was involved in that some way. And a lot of my best memories of me hanging out with my uncles and my grandparents and everything was because we were watching a Cowboys game. I mean, I distinctly remember one of the reasons I remember, Kevin, the arm bar by Deion Sanders so much is because my uncle and I bitched about it for like 2 hours after the game, and we're just ticked off.
You're the one who brings up Dez all the time.
Yeah.
So we know. Like you can talk about it 7 years later, but
my son cannot comprehend a Thanksgiving being ruined because a great player ran in the snow and tried to recover what was a dead ball in a game. Like, he cannot fathom that a game was won and then lost because of a bad play from a great player.
I always felt really lucky being like kind of born and raised in Dallas as a sports fan, because you had the Cowboys. If you are like Kevin and I am and Corey, Reggie, I'm honestly not exactly sure like all of your rooting interest, right? But I know that this show specifically is born and raised in Dallas. Hey, nothing against the morning show and nothing against G-Bag Nation, right? But I mean, you do have some people that weren't born and raised as Cowboy, Maverick, Ranger, and somewhat Stars fan. I always say somewhat Stars because they didn't come to here till I was a sophomore in high school.
Yep.
So I was not born and raised as a Stars fan because they'd existed in Minnesota for a while. So I always felt fortunate that, you know what? My baseball team, nobody cares about around the country. And my basketball team, nobody cares about around the country. So it's really cool to you have an underdog team. Two of my teams that I've rooted for my whole life, they don't care about. They're not trying to throw them on Sports Center a whole bunch or now MLB Network or NBA TV but like those are my teams. It's really cool to kind of have something that when you go around the country, like, whoa, you're a Rangers fan? Like, I don't know if I've ever met a Rangers fan.
I mean, I hear what you're saying, Mike, but that sucks. I don't know if I've ever met a Rangers fan.
It makes me feel unique. Through the 90s, you stick through the Mavericks. Like, I am a Mavericks fan. Yes, we are the worst franchise in all of sports, but I still am a Mavericks fan. And you had the Cowboys. You're like, you know what? How many people in other cities have the most popular team? And then in the 90s, you're like in the most popular sport.
Right. Yeah.
And so you're like, wow, this is so lucky that I'm also a Cowboys fan because I do get to root for the most popular team. I'm never going to root for the Yankees. I'm never going to root for the Lakers, or you want to throw a few other teams in there. I totally get it. But it's just like, I have as a growing up fan, one of the most popular teams and now the most popular team in all of sports that is my team. And I always thought that was really cool to have. And unfortunately, they just haven't held up to the standard that you're supposed to hold up to when you are the Lakers, when you are the Yankees, when you are the Cowboys, when you are, I guess hockey, would you say it's the Red Wings? I'm not exactly sure.
I always think of the Maple Leafs, but that's just because
Let's go with an American team, though.
Okay.
It's an American trophy.
Okay, the Red Wings is fine.
That's the thing that really stinks for me that I think stinks for us, this show, is we lived through the 90s. We lived through the greatness. Our parents lived through the 70s and lived through. You make the playoffs every year. And in fact, you make the NFC Championship game pretty much every year. Like, that is your given right as a Cowboy fan. So now when I hear people defend the Cowboys, you know who defends them the most to me as a Cowboys fan, born and raised, who grandpa had season tickets from day one of the Dallas Cowboys? They weren't born and raised a Cowboys fan. So they're the ones that make the most excuses for this and go, it's fine. right? If you grew up a Jets fan, or if you grew up a Bears fan or a Washington fan, or whoever you did, right? It's like, well, this is okay. Like, why are you guys so upset? Like, they play around 500. They're really popular. Like, they make the playoffs once every 3 years. Like, this is what it's like being a fan.
I've told you what my son said, right? This is back when he was in elementary school. He's in high school now. When he was in elementary school, I think it might have been against the Chiefs, but the Cowboys lost their second game, and they were 1-1. And there was this big headline on the front of the Dallas Morning News, like, Cowboys go down. And my son goes, what's the big deal? They won one game and they lost one game. So they're not that good and they're not that bad, just like every year. So to your point, that is his perception as a Cowboys fan. And how many people listening right now, that's your perception of a Cowboys fan? I'm listening and I'm tired of listening to these old people talk about how good they used to be because they're always mediocre. That's how my son feels about the Cowboys, which sucks.
Yeah, and I know I joke about you're loyal to the laundry, you root for the laundry, but that's a real thing. I mean, like, think about how many players leave your team and you don't care about them. And it's a real thing that you're rooting for that jersey more than you're rooting for the name on the back of the jersey.